Some meanings do not remain reflections. They begin to require movement. That is the line we're anchoring on today.
Hmm.
And I have to say, it's a line that feels incredibly heavy. Not heavy like a burden, but, I don't know, heavy like density.
Yeah, like a star collapsing in on itself before it does something new.
Exactly. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are shifting gears. We are not tearing into a tech stack or analyzing some geopolitical crisis. We are slowing way, way down.
Yeah, we are.
We're looking at a very specific stack of notes on the Devi Bhagavatam, specifically a section titled The Dawn of Purposeful Alignment.
It's a pretty radical shift in pace, you're right. Usually when we cover these kinds of texts, the focus is always on the spectacle.
The battles, the big interventions.
The battles, the divine interventions, the thunderbolts. But the source material we have today is zooming in on something almost microscopic. We're looking at a transition phase, a specific narrative beat called When Meaning Began to Ask for Action.
And just to set the stage for you, we aren't talking about the action sequence itself. This isn't the part where the hero draws the sword.
Yeah.
This isn't the montage where the student masters the magic. This is the moment before the moment.
Yeah.
The source material describes it as the precise space between understanding and doing.
Exactly. It's that gap between the cognitive aha and the kinetic movement. Our whole mission today is to try and map that territory.
Right.
Because the text argues that this space, it isn't empty. It's not just a waiting room. It's an active, pressurized state. The goal is to understand what happens when an insight settles so deeply into your psyche that it stops being an idea and starts becoming a responsibility.
I want to challenge that, though, right away, because slowing down and waiting for insight to settle, that sounds a lot like a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
In the modern world, and certainly in high-stakes environments, hesitation is, it's the enemy. We're taught to iterate fast, break things, move now. Is this text just romanticizing procrastination?
That is the inevitable question, isn't it? But the Devi Bhagavatam is making a really critical distinction here between hesitation and gestation.
Okay.
Hesitation comes from doubt or fear. You stop because you don't know what to do. The state described in the dawn of purposeful alignment is the opposite. You know exactly what to do. The text says, meaning has now settled. It's about the physics of that transition.
All right, so let's look at that physics. The source uses this phrase. What was once only perceived begins to press gently upon those who witness it. That word press really stands out to me. It implies weight.
It does. I mean, think about atmospheric pressure. You don't feel it constantly, but it's there. When the text says the meaning begins to press, it's describing the shift from an intellectual concept to a physical reality.
Right.
When you look at a blueprint for a house and understand it intellectually, that's holding the meaning. But when you stand on the empty lot and you realize, I have to build this, the blueprint, it presses on you.
So it shifts from a nice to know to a need to do.
But, and this is the key from the source, it's a soft demand. The text is explicit about this. No instruction is issued. No urgency is declared.
There's no burning bush. No commander shouting orders.
None.
Which, I mean, honestly is harder to deal with. If there's an emergency or a boss yelling, the adrenaline takes over, you just react. But the source says, understanding begins to ask for response. That implies agency. It implies you have to choose to let the pressure move you.
Precisely. It's the difference between obedience and alignment. Obedience is external. Do this because I said so. Alignment is internal. Do this because it is the only logical continuation of what you now know. The text describes this as an internal evolution. The observer isn't being pushed from the back, they're being pulled from the inside.
I like that distinction, the push and the pull. But I want to go back to the timing aspect. The text is very aggressive about not being aggressive. It says, not immediate action, not impulsive movement.
And this is where we really have to unpack the concept of readiness. In our culture, we tend to conflate ready with impatient. We think being ready means, straining at the leash, foaming at the mouth to get started.
Right. The bias for action. If you aren't moving, you're dying. If I have a sudden realization, say, I realize a strategy is failing, my instinct is to send the email now.
Yeah.
I want to discharge that energy immediately. I want to fix it while I'm feeling it.
The panic fix. We all do it. But let me play devil's advocate to your devil's advocate. If you send that email while you're still, hyperventilating about the problem, is the communication clear or is it just noisy?
It's usually noisy. It's usually half-baked.
Exactly. The source text says readiness does not hurry. It challenges this idea that speed equals effectiveness. It argues that the impulse to act immediately is often just an attempt to alleviate our own anxiety, not to actually solve the problem.
The hurry is a symptom of discomfort.
Often, yes. We rush because sitting in the tension of knowing but not yet doing is deeply uncomfortable. But the Devi Bhagavatam says you have to sit there. You have to let the concrete cure. If you build on wet concrete, the structure fails.
I want to push on this stillness concept, though, because the text also says stillness alone is no longer sufficient. So we're not talking about meditation here. We aren't talking about sitting on a mountaintop forever.
No, not at all. This is the paradox of the archer. Picture an archer who has drawn the bowstring back to their ear. Are they still?
Yes.
They're running around. But are they relaxed?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. They are in a state of supreme active tension. Stillness is no longer sufficient because the arrow must fly. The potential energy is peaking. But if they release that string 1 millisecond before the aim is true, because they were in a hurry, they miss the target.
That's a really helpful visual. The stillness isn't the absence of energy, it's the focusing of energy.
Correct. And the text says, clarity does not shout, it settles.
Clarity does not shout. That runs counter to everything in our media landscape. Everything shouts. Breaking news shouts. Social media shouts. Click here shouts. We're conditioned to wait for the shout before we move.
Which is why we're so reactive. If you're waiting for a shout, you're waiting for a threat, you're operating on cortisol. The source is describing a motivation system based on clarity, not cortisol. It says, those who witness this do not feel compelled, they feel clear.
That distinction between compelled and clear. Compelled feels like I'm being forced against my will or I'm a victim of circumstance. I was compelled to resign.
Right, I was compelled to fight. It implies a loss of sovereignty. Clear, on the other hand, implies the removal of obstacles. When you're clear, you move because the path is open, not because the wall behind you is closing in.
This leads us to the identity shift the text describes, the space where insight becomes responsibility. Now, I have to be honest, responsibility is a heavy word.
It is.
It sounds like chores. It sounds like a burden. Great, now I have the responsibility to fix this.
It can feel that way, yeah, if we view it through a transactional lens. But look at the phrase, alignment expressing itself outwardly. That's the key definition in the source.
Okay.
The move toward action isn't a chore. It is a byproduct. Think about gravity again. If you pour water on a slope, does the water feel burdened by the responsibility of flowing downhill?
No, it just flows. It's the nature of water on a slope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you truly understand the nature of a situation, if that meaning has really settled, your action becomes as natural as water flowing downhill. You don't need a checklist or a guilt trip to make you do it. You do it because your internal reality finally matches the external reality.
So the characters in this text, in this dawn of purposeful alignment, they aren't thinking, oh, I better do this or the gods will be angry.
No.
They're thinking, I see the board, I see the move,
Yeah.
and I am the piece that must move.
Where recognition prepares to become participation. That is the line. You stop being the audience, you realize you are on the stage. The fourth wall breaks, but you haven't spoken your line yet.
I want to zoom in on that specific moment, the moment before. The source is really strict about staying here. It says the text does not speak of deeds yet.
Mm-hmm.
It feels cinematic, like that long, quiet shot before the battle begins.
It creates a unique kind of narrative tension. The source describes it. Nothing has begun, nothing has concluded, but also something can no longer remain still. It's a threshold state.
Is there anything comparable to that in the modern world, or is this purely a mystical thing?
No, I think it's comparable to a launch sequence. Think about a rocket on the pad. The countdown is happening, the engines aren't firing yet, there's no liftoff, but the systems are pressurizing, the fuel is flowing, the clamps are holding. It looks still from a distance, but inside, it is just vibrating with the inevitability of flight.
And usually that's the scary part. That's the hold your breath moment. But the emotional state described in the Devi Bhagavatam isn't fear. The text describes a grounded peace.
It is the peace of inevitability. It's the absence of hesitation. When you're truly ready, when the alignment is locked in, you don't feel frantic. You feel solid.
Let's try to synthesize this. We have 4 distinct lessons or pillars laid out in the source material. I want to pressure test them a bit because they sound good on paper, but I want to see how they hold up.
Let's run them.
Okay, pillar number 1. Meaning eventually seeks expression. My question is, does it always? Can't I just have a realization and sit on it forever?
You can, but then it ceases to be meaning, and it becomes memory, or worse, it becomes stagnation. The source argues that living meaning is kinetic. If you realize you love someone, but you never say it and never show it, that meaning eventually atrophies. It has to move to survive. It requires movement, not just to affect the world, but to sustain itself.
Okay, fair enough. Use it or lose it.
Yeah.
Pillar number 2, clarity precedes action. We touched on this, but I want to push on the flip side. What about analysis paralysis? If I wait for perfect clarity, I might never do anything.
That's the danger of misinterpreting clarity. Clarity isn't omniscience. It doesn't mean knowing how the entire journey will end. It means seeing the first step without obstruction. The text isn't saying, wait until you have a 50-year plan. It's saying, don't step into the fog. If you're paralyzed, you aren't clear. You're confused. Clarity is sharp. It cuts through the paralysis.
That's a vital distinction. Clarity cuts, confusion waits. Okay, pillar number 3, alignment shapes intention before movement.
This is the architectural point. Think of alignment as the mold and intention as the concrete.
I like that. Go on.
If your alignment is off, if you're motivated by jealousy or fear or ego, that's the shape your intention takes. And once you act, that concrete hardens. The action is solidified in the world. The text is warning us. Do not pour the concrete until the mold is straight, because you cannot unpour it.
That's actually kind of terrifying. It implies that if I act while I'm unaligned, I'm solidifying a mistake. I'm building a crooked house.
Exactly. And we see this all the time, people rushing to do something, but because they're acting out of anger or insecurity, the action just creates more mess. The alignment was wrong, so the action was flawed from birth.
Which brings us to pillar number 4. Readiness does not hurry. This feels like the antidote to that crooked house.
It is. It's the ultimate safety mechanism. True readiness is calm because it knows the outcome is handled. If you're rushing, you are often trying to outrun your own doubt. You're trying to prove you can do it before you change your mind.
Outrunning your own doubt. That hits home. The whole hustle culture often feels like that. We're running so fast so we don't have to look at the cracks in the foundation.
And this text invites us to stop running, to look at the foundation, to let the meaning settle until the cracks are gone, and then move.
It's a powerful framework. And I think for you listening, this is something to really audit in your own life. We're all facing decisions, big and small. We all have things we know we should do. But this source challenges us to ask, is the delay because I'm lazy, or is it because the meaning hasn't settled yet?
And conversely, is the urgency because I'm ready or because I'm panicked?
Imagine how different our leadership would look, our relationships would look, if we waited for that soft demand instead of just reacting to the loud noises.
We would make fewer moves, certainly, but the moves we made would be absolute. They'd be unstoppable because they wouldn't be powered by adrenaline. They'd be powered by reality, by that purposeful alignment.
So let's recap the journey we've taken on this deep dive. We started with the idea that meaning is a physical force. It presses. It has a real density to it.
We moved through the physics of that pressure, how it shifts from just a mental image to a physical responsibility. We distinguished between the biological flinch of reaction and the spiritual strike of action.
We look at the transformation of the observer. You know how you go from watching the movie to being in the movie, driven not by a director's shout, but by the logic of the scene itself. Clarity does not shout, it settles.
And we spent time in that moment before, the rocket on the pad, the archer at full draw, that space where potential energy is at its absolute limit, just waiting for the release.
So why does this matter? Why spend all this time dissecting a few paragraphs from an ancient text about doing nothing? Well, it matters because we're addicted to the doing. We measure our worth by our output, by our speed. But the Devi Bhagavatam offers this counter-narrative. It suggests that the integrity of the action is determined strictly by the quality of the stillness that comes before it.
It reminds us that if you skip the stillness, you compromise the action. If you don't let the meaning settle, you're just making noise.
The source teases us a little bit at the end. It says, from this clarity, action will emerge and that unfolding comes next. But we're not covering the next today. We aren't going to talk about the arrow flying. We're leaving you right here with the tension on the string.
In the pause.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with the final question posed by the source material. It's a question meant to be asked in that quiet, pressurized space. What does this meaning demand?
It's a question to carry with you.
Sit with your own meanings, the things you've learned recently, the hard truths you're avoiding, the ideas you're holding, and ask yourself, are they still just reflections? Or are they beginning to ask for movement? Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.